Cam Kasky, the building, everybody. He's was a congressional candidate and got back from the West Bank. He went to the West Bank, and he's here to fill us in on his journey and some legislative initiatives he's been taking. An honor to have you here once again. I'm going to leave you real quick with the chat so you can explain to them your trip and the significance of your appearance today.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll be back in a second. Are you sure you don't want something to drink?
I'm all good.
All right.
Hey everyone, it's Cam. I've been coming on here since I was kind of young. Just got back from the occupied West Bank recently and have been working with Ro Khanna on solutions for what can be done in Congress about the occupation and the rapid expansion of the annexation there. Because I think a lot of people, including people who are pro-Palestine and fully supportive of the cause, just aren't aware of the exact tactics the state of Israel is using to expand this and the death by 1,000 cuts that they employ in a way where I would say they're snapping Gaza's neck. They have been slowly choking out the West Bank, but it's getting faster and faster every day. And they ultimately have the same goal for the Palestinians in the West Bank as they do for the Palestinians in Gaza. It's just Gaza bears virtually zero religious significance to the Zionist movement. It's just beachfront property where Trump wants to build a bunch of casinos and a Disneyland, whereas the West Bank has all the religious significance of the Zionist movement. So the means by which they're trying to destroy the lives of the Palestinians there's a lot more steps to it. And there's land confiscation using archaeology as an excuse. There's demolition orders being placed on community centers. There's a lot to it. And Ro and I were trying to figure out how comprehensive we could be in a resolution to make everybody go on the record with where they're at.
Yeah. So what are some of the details of this resolution?
So when I was in the West Bank, I went to an ancient city called Sebastia, where the mayor offered me a hit of his hookah, and I hadn't consumed nicotine in like 2 years, and I'd barely eaten in the past 2 days because I'm allergic to sesame seeds, and in Palestine they put sesame seeds on everything.
I thought it was the ancient homeland.
Right. Yeah, so they call Sebastia is like what was once Samaria, I guess.
I'm joking because I've heard this from some of my Jewish chatters who are like, I'm allergic to sesame, and these motherfuckers say Israel is supposed to be my ancient homeland.
Oh, well, yeah, sesame was in everything in Palestine, and
they do that as a contingency plan. They do that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a mechanism of defense.
No, I said people were like, did the Palestinians ever make you feel unsafe? And I was like, yeah, whenever there was a plate put in front of me, because denying food at the home of any brown person is you're in dangerous waters. You don't say no when you were offered seconds. You don't say no when you're offered food. It's not a good situation to be in. But anyway, I was in Sebastia and I was talking to the mayor. I hit his hookah. I was fucking tweaking because it had been so long since I had nicotine. It was a really high concentrate and I was wearing a suit. I hadn't slept. And I learned that Israel will just take a plot of land and send a picture of like broken clay pots there and say, okay, now we get to confiscate this from the Palestinians. And they'll say, Palestinians can't build here. They can't develop. And that's just one means by which they do this. But again, in other areas, the settlements will expand and choke out a suburb, a village. It'll make it impossible for them to build new housing. God, it sounds like fucking abundance. It'll be impossible for them to build new housing, so they have to build upwards, not outwards. And you end up in a situation that's like the projects. And that's happening in a lot of suburbs in Bethlehem right now. So we call for an end to the land confiscation. We call for the cancellation of the 19 new settlements that got approved just right when I got back. Right when I got back from the West Bank in the beginning of January, 19 new settlements got approved. And a lot of people in U.S. politics, Democrats, liberal Zionists, even Trump, have signaled this opposition to the West Bank annexation, but have not done anything substantive to go against it. They'll condemn the settler violence, but they will fail to recognize that the settler violence is the direct result of Israeli policy. They like to act like settlements are like acne and they just pop up out of nowhere. And they don't recognize that it's state sanctioned, it's state funded, and it's very often funded with our money. And this is another thing Ro and I address in the resolution. We subsidize settlement activity because the U.S., dual citizens living in settlements get tax credits. So the U.S. taxpayer is just funding this occupation, and they're funding these settlements that directly lead to not only acts of violence, acts that really need to be called terror, because the means by which the settlers are trying to choke out Palestinian life there, it's more than just the many people who they will just outright kill in broad daylight. They'll drive around on ATVs blasting music that says death to Arabs. They did that 2 days ago in Ahir, the village that I stayed in. It's a shepherd's village where the settlers will show up while they're trying to graze their land, and they'll threaten them with flash grenades. There are so many methods they use. They
walk out with guns and like they brandish weapons at them. Sometimes they shoot them and kill the Palestinians.
I was in a village where a man named Ada Hathlin, who was an activist and was really a pillar of his community, was shot in broad daylight by a settler named Yunon Levy, who obviously has faced no meaningful consequences for it. And I got to meet his family and this community that's been here since 1948. And right now, there are settlements all around it. And these settlers, I don't want to downplay the evil of it by saying the word troll, but they troll. I mean, they build 10-foot tall metal menorahs that they put directly outside the gate. And they use the Star of David as a way to mock them.
Yeah.
I mean, they put up these flagpoles with Israeli flags all over the community as if to choke them out. And then they just regularly speed on through. I mean, I was up doing kind of a settler watch all night where from like 8:30 p.m. to 6 a.m. you're sitting in the community center looking at these security cameras, waiting to see when the settlers are going to come. And then you accompany the villagers to figure out what's going on, and you stand behind them because if you get too close, you could potentially make the situation elevated, but you make sure you're recording. And I was sitting up there one night, and the settlers would just speed through the town at 90 miles an hour while there were kids walking around in the street. It's the most horrifying thing in the entire world. And I really do think Israeli settlers, other than maybe people involved in the Epstein ring, I know few people who are more protected in the international world than Israeli settlers.
Yeah. No, you went face to face with the Jewish clan. Like their operation, their methods, down to like using religious figures, like religious symbolism is almost identical to the KKK in the way that they operate, except the KKK had, some limited backing from the state at times, but like these guys are directly being funded by one of the most powerful countries on the planet. It's unheard of. It's insane.
The guy who's in charge of the West Bank right now is this guy Bezalel Smotrich.
Yeah.
And he makes Netanyahu look like a fucking Care Bear. And he's the finance minister of Israel, but he's been put in charge of the West Bank.
Yeah.
This is a guy.
He once famously said, why would I want my wife to be in the same maternity ward as an Arab, a terrorist that will grow up to, murder my children?
People see,
inside of Israel. Like he was talking about Israeli citizens, Palestinian citizens of Israel.
People see Netanyahu as this symbol for the state of Israel. And I think Netanyahu is actually much better at PR than people think he is. Smotrich and Ben Gvir, in my opinion, are much more emblematic of what the state of Israel is as a whole. But Smotrich he's basically, for those of you who don't know, he's Judge Holden from Blood Meridian. Like he is just a sadist, and he was wanted by the state of Israel just decades ago for essentially acts of terror.
Yeah.
And now he's just been put in charge of the West Bank, which he sees as this frontier.
Ben Gvir too. He was rendered ineligible to serve in the Israeli occupying forces because of how radical he was considered. Like, think that the same IDF that has conducted a genocide was like, bro, is a bridge too far for us.
And now these guys are running the Israeli government, and you get in a lot of trouble when you cite things that Israeli officials have said. I've been told I've been spreading anti-Semitism by just quoting shit from the Knesset, and I'm like, no, sorry guys, this is what you guys are doing. It's like when you talk about the Greater Israel Plan, and people will say you're spreading the anti-Semitic Greater Israel theory, and it's like it's in the charter of the Likud party, which is Netanyahu's party, in 1973. From the charter of the party, they talk about Greater Israel.
Yeah.
And Mike Huckabee is doing a pretty good job explaining what the plan is here, but it's really scary. And my buddy Jasper Nathaniel, who obviously, he's a great reporter.
Very handsome guy and taller than me.
Ridiculously handsome guy.
And taller than me. It's
like
crazy.
Big brother to me. He says, even if you took Gaza out of the picture, which you cannot do under any circumstances unless purely for rhetorical purposes, even if you divided the genocide in Gaza with the genocidal occupation in the West Bank is still one of the biggest human rights crises of this era.
100%. Which is part of the reason why for a lot of liberal Zionists, like before October 7, that was like the one thing that they could like hold on to as like a reasonable critique against the state. Like liberal Zionists in Israel, liberal Zionists all around would be like, oh, we don't really like the West Bank stuff. And some of them actually would engage in activism even at times against, and I'm not talking about like the actual anti-Zionists in Israel that go out and are constantly helping out the Palestinian population. I'm talking about like people who consider themselves to be liberal Zionists who would openly talk about settlers as like, violent monsters and stuff like that, because partially they recognize the sheer cruelty of this structure, right? Like the sheer cruelty of this ongoing occupation, this military occupation, and the violent nature of it in its maintenance. But now I feel like a lot of the people in Israeli society have moved away from that position, and a lot of liberal Zionists have, decided, no, it's worth it. It's fine.
I mean, look, there's this thing that liberal Zionism has in common with Zionism, which is that both of them are Zionism. But there are definitely plenty of Israeli people I met who were doing work in the West Bank while I was there.
Yeah.
There's this thing called protective presence, where they will accompany Palestinian farmers to go about their business, and their physical presence there is considered to be something that de-escalates the situation and makes it less likely for people to be attacked. There was a young Israeli woman who was in Umah here with me, who was considered by everyone there to be this very meaningful part of the community. She would teach the kids at the community center and do some sort of schooling for them. I will say, in the guest house where the activists would stay, it's like a trailer. There was only one bottom bunk left, and I did not want to sleep on a top bunk. And I put all my shit on the bed. I laid out my clothes, and I was doing the night patrol, so I was gonna be up all night. I was gonna fall asleep at 6:30 a.m. And middle of the night, I go back to the guest house to go get my portable charger because I was not going to let my phone die while I was doing settler watch. And all of my shit is off the bed, and it was moved to a top bunk, and my thing was unplugged from the wall. And that Israeli activist was in my bed, and I was like, holy shit, I just got settled. Like, even the Israelis who are putting their bodies on the line to stand against this, they can't help themselves.
So how did you manage that situation?
I mean, I just slept in the top bunk. I wasn't gonna kick.
Damn,
like, she goes there 3 days a week. Like, she's
It's prison rules.
a meaningful part of that community. I was there. I mean, I wish I could have been there longer, and I wish I could get back in. But I was.
You don't think they'll let you back in?
I don't know. I'm working on it. Right now, obviously, it's not exactly the time to go. But I was already working on figuring out how I could get myself back in there.
Let's talk about what's really important here, which is the feelings of people living in the United States of America.
Of course.
Specifically American Jews, because I wish you could have a conversation with Ezra Klein. I think that would be. Have you guys ever met before?
No.
You run in those circles sometimes. But Ezra Klein was talking about the Iran war.
And this is.
And and he had this to say. I want to know what you. I want to hear what you have to say about this.
Biggest issue in this moment, but the centrality of Israel in the operation has raised some concerns for me about what this is going to mean for anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
You see the amount of talk on the MAGA right, but elsewhere as well.
He's
That
talking to Ben Hamas Rhodes, by the way.
Copy.
Yeah.
Israel's leverage over Donald Trump, or that this is all just some kind of Israeli plot. I'm not saying this is the.
Now, listen, if someone were to have a conversation about like anti-Semitism as an anti-Zionist, who's like, maybe Israel should stop centering Judaism in all of its actions, I'd be there. I understand it. But Ezra Klein in this circumstance is centering his own personal feelings and like what it might do to anti-Semitic conspiracies at a time when like I feel like it's virtually impossible to put that toothpaste back in the tube, and it certainly doesn't seem like that big of an issue for a lot of the champions of Zionism in American media and in American news to make this association with regular frequency. How does that make you feel as an American Jew, like hearing Ezra Klein say this, who's been to the West Bank?
Yeah, I mean, I'm terrified about the rise in anti-Semitism, and it makes me so infuriated with the Zionist movement because they've really put us in this position where using the same rhetorical playbook as white supremacists and saying Jews and Israel are the same exact thing puts us in a very precarious position all around the world when the state of Israel is just committing genocide and all these other acts of evil. And it will never fail to amaze me how the Stop Anti-Semitism community can be so supportive of, again, this Zionist narrative that is identical to the narrative of the people who mean to see us destroyed, which is the Jews equal Israel. Like I say this whenever Zionist friends and family of mine want to talk to me about it. I'm like, you understand that your understanding of this is identical to the understanding of Nick Fuentes.
Yes.
When I say the Jews in Israel are a different thing, like that is me doing not the neo-Nazi thing. And it's the same thing with the Jews aren't white narrative. I know a lot of people who say Jews aren't white, and my whole thing is like, well, I mean, not every Jew is white. Eric Andre is not white, and he's a Jewish guy. But
Drake.
One of the main things is like, listen, the white supremacists and the neo-Nazis, they say we aren't white. I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to say the same thing as the neo-Nazis.
Also, I mean, Jews are white right now. I say for now, because I think a central plank of the modern right-wing movement is whether or not Jews remain in the white category. Like that's what it feels like to me, at least. Like judging by the things that I hear. People from J.D. Vance all the way to Nick Fuentes, like the conversations that they're having is whether Jews get to still be a part of the white in-group and
for me,
what happens next if it doesn't happen. And it's like, from my perspective, look, I'm Muslim. My name is Hasan. Like, at least in the interim, like what will take place, I think, is if the Republicans do continue on with this journey and they decide Jews are not white, it's going to be like Muslims. Maybe.
I mean, look, like for me, and this is just, I'm kind of a dipshit layman. Like I'm a dipshit layman who just got a resolution introduced in Congress. So I'm not too dipshit a layman, but I don't identify myself as an intellectual. For me, my whiteness is determined by how a police officer sees me while I'm walking by.
Yeah.
And how a hiring manager sees me if I send in an application. And I'm like, yeah, as far as the barrel of a cop's gun goes, I am white. And in the United States of America, that is what whiteness is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's designed at the systemic level by the in-group. It's an in-group out-group dynamic, simply put.
And also just in like the way that I act and like the fact that I don't really have any culture, like in that sense.
They're gonna say you're anti-white racist now.
I'm not an anti-white racist. I'm fine. I'm fine with being white. I'm fine with white people. I don't really have a sense of culture. Like when I went to Palestine, people were talking to me about this area, and they were talking about how their family has lived there for 800 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I'm from Parkland, Florida. My family moved there in 2000. And that was another really interesting thing about being in Palestine. Two that I'll share quickly. One of them was I thought there were going to be two responses to people finding out I was Jewish, like celebratory solidarity, like, yay, you're standing with us. That's so great. And then also wary mistrust because the Jewish star is being used as this logo for all these atrocities being committed against them every day. What I did not expect, and maybe I should have, was the third option, which is nobody fucking cares. Like, it was just boring to people. They were like, oh yeah, look at that. But to Palestinians in the West Bank, there's two types of people: people who are trying to immediately inflict harm upon them, and people who are not. And if you are one of the latter, you are most welcome. So that was interesting. Another thing was, and I think this is just like having only ever been in Western society, because the first time I ever left the United States was to go to Palestine.
Wait, what the fuck?
Yeah, I've been to like almost 50 states doing gun violence prevention stuff, but I had never left America before.
Oh my God.
And the first thing I did when I landed overseas for the first time was lied to Israeli customs about what I was doing there.
Yeah.
Because I have family in a settlement.
You do?
I have like close blood relatives in a settlement. And
Did they know that you were there? Did they talk to you?
well, I said like, hey, can I come visit? And they were like, of course you can come visit. You know, they know my opinions and they know my positions
don't
on the
give a
matter.
shit.
Well, no, they you know, I kind of presented like, listen, I want to see how you guys live here. I want to see what your side of the story is. My grandma always said to me, like, have you heard the other side of the story? And I'm like, yeah, I went to Hebrew school and grew up in like South Florida. The other side of the story is the only thing I had heard until I was fucking 20 years old.
So is it bros doing Jewish tequila?
Well, so I said to my family, like, I'm going to come visit you. And then I went to the airport and was like, oh yeah, I'm going to visit my family. Just so in case they made the phone call to verify that, my family would say yes. And then I left the airport and I texted them like, okay, where did you guys think I was going? Like, come on.
Yeah.
And then I went to Beit Zahur right away.
Did you meet with them at all? Like, what are their I mean, look, before people get on your ass about this and be like, oh, he has settler family members or whatever, because I know people will do that. You know, Cam literally not only has gone through this transformational journey personally, but also did go there and is like actively trying to push legislation to you know, to at least offer like a crumb of freedom to the Palestinians, or at least put people on the record about what their true position is on this issue. So what I was going to say is, have you been able to, well, two things. One, did you talk to them about like, you know, what the fuck they're doing there and like what their response was if you had that conversation?
No, I mean, it's been really tough in my family because there's the few of us in the family who share my beliefs on the matter. And then there's a larger group that do not share my beliefs, but don't act like I am trying to commit acts of terror against my cousins. And then there's the people in my family who think that I mean to kill them. And, and that's just like,
They think like they're like, you're a terrorist now. You switch sides.
And I'm just like, honestly, it's kind of, I have a lot of cousins and it's a lot to keep up with. And I'm like, all right, if you love this country more than you love me, great, bye. Like, I'm very fortunate that my close immediate family is aligned with me. Perhaps more moderate in some ways, but generally perceives the things that I perceive as atrocities as well. And that's enough. But there, I mean, there was a group chat that some of my cousins had called Kamas. And I was like, all right, that's kind of funny. But there was a huge thing in my family about that. But no, I mean, listen,
They call you Kamaz? That's awesome.
I don't know if they call me that. The group chat's called that.
Yeah.
But it's just like the regular, you know, Jewish anti-Zionist thing. It's like this whole thing in your family. And it's just, you have to recognize that, you know, we have all been the recipients of this giant propaganda campaign, and all they want you to do is get really infuriated with them about it so they can more easily characterize you as somebody who is not rationally thinking.
Yeah.
So I just don't engage. I mean, there's a lot of people in my life who are in one way or another pro-Israel will talk to me about it, and they'll ask me questions and they'll push me about it a little bit, and then they'll characterize me as the one who always wants to talk about it. And I'm like, guys, I ask you about your kids. That's my number one thing that I do with family. is I ask about their kids because I want to hear about their kids. Like, I love my friends and family's kids because
so
I
you
get to
can-
enjoy the cute parts, but I don't have to change any diapers. You know what I'm saying?
So you can brainwash them with Hamas propaganda. Hamas propaganda.
I mean, I tell them what I believe, and I tell them why I believe it, and if
Have you been able to make have you been able to make inroads with any of your relatives? Like, have you been able to convert any people in your immediate family away from unlimited amounts of pro-Zionist propaganda that they probably grew up with nonstop, unconditionally?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, getting them where I'm at, I don't think it's possible to be where I'm at this point without having experienced it in person, just because there's something, even if you recognize what the West Bank occupation is, to be there and to feel it in the air and to feel how pervasive it is in the way that every step you hear, it could be someone who means to hurt someone around you. Every checkpoint you pass, every building you go into could have a demolition order. To really understand the way that it fogs the air. Like in the old Scooby-Doo episodes where the fog would be so thick that they pull out a butter knife and cut a circle. Like, you have to see it to understand it. Because I had my beliefs on the West Bank and on Golan Heights settlement and everything. But then I went there and I said, even though I understood it, I couldn't possibly understand. And I couldn't possibly understand the human reality on the ground. But there's just a lot of interesting elements to this that you aren't taught, even by pro-Palestine people who are totally like-minded. There's just nuances. The way that I describe Israel-Palestine to people in my family is, you know, some people say it's this nuanced, complex issue. Some people say it's this black and white, simple thing. It's both. It's black and white and simple, and there's complexities and nuances. It's just once you've navigated all the complexities and nuances, they take you to the exact same conclusion that the black and white one did. So yeah, read about it, learn it. You gave me 10 Myths About Israel by Ilan Pappé. It was a great book. But at the end of the day,
You've come a long way even since then. You've had, I think, a transformational experience going to the West Bank in general.
I mean, look, you know,
this is why I don't criticize J Street that much, because like at the end of the day, even if they are ultimately a Zionist institution, like a liberal Zionist one, they do accidentally send, you know, congresspersons to the West Bank. And I think especially a lot of them, like, you know, many of them come back from that trip with a radically different perspective.
I mean, when you've looked a settler in the eye, it is a haunting thing. Like, the thing that haunts me most from Israel-Palestine is having watched The Voice of Hind Rajab and just hearing that in my head sometimes at night, just hearing the phone call, and which, if you haven't seen that movie, you need to watch it. That is the thing that has haunted me the most, but I definitely think every day just about the look in the eyes of the settlers who were coming to the villages, because these people will pull off the hijabs that women are wearing. They will shoot bullet holes in water tanks. They will cut the power. They will scream the Arabic word for whore into the window of the houses where the women are living.
It's like a zombie apocalypse.
It's like the look smaxers have this thing called hunter eyes, and it looks like the eyes of someone who is looking for prey. And it's horrifying. And I don't say that in a dehumanizing way. As a matter of fact, it's extremely human, and that's why it's so horrifying.
Yeah. No, they also, on top of that, this is like an unaccountable force of unlimited evil that is backed by an incredibly powerful occupational army. Like an army that's occupying these lands illegally.
And that's why
they're armed to the hill, and they will defend them.
Well, and people act like the settlement violence happens in spite of the Israeli government. And it's like all of these settler killings of Palestinians and of American citizens who are Palestinian American, the Israeli military is always right there watching. And very often the Palestinian Authority is right there watching too.
Yeah.
And that's why I learned Hamas was able to gain so much support, is because people in Gaza were presented with two parties. They're getting shot at their entire lives. And there's two parties on the ballot. There is the we are going to stand there and watch party, and there is the we are going to shoot back party. And while Hamas has used a lot of tactics, including on October 7th, that I do not believe are something that I in any way support, at the end of the day, Palestinians saw them and said, these are the people who are going to fight for us. And the Palestinian Authority is not only not fighting for us, they are taking part in bullying us.
Yeah. Palestinian Authority, a lot of people don't understand this in the United States of America, like, and in the Western world, because they're just like utterly incurious dullards, and also very racist. But the Palestinian Authority is functionally a Palestinian face, if you can call it that, on the Israeli security apparatus. Like, there have been instances historically where even the Palestinian Authority has like sided with the Palestinians, but more often than not, especially in the West Bank, the function that the PA plays is to identify like revolutionary elements, identify people who are actually following the international human rights allotted legal resistance that the Palestinians have on their own indigenous territory designed by the United Nations, identify them and apprehend them and capture them and aid and assist in the Israeli missions.
And that was one of the things when I was ultimately like a pro-Israel person. Like people say that I was Zionist, and it's like I was functionally Zionist because I had the Islamophobia and like the right-wing nationalist perspective on it. But I never identified as Zionist because I was like, wait, I'm supposed to think that God promised like this one area to us? That's kind of silly. But I was very pro-Israel. I thought it could kind of do no wrong, and that anything done in service of Israel was a positive thing. That's what I was raised to believe. I was raised to believe that, you know, the people you met who were in the IDF were these brave heroes and everything, and that Gal Gadot was really cool for Wonder Woman because she was a soldier herself. Like, those were all these understandings that I had. And even when I became more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause and more critical of the Israeli government, I just couldn't wrap my head around how they could support Hamas, because I didn't recognize the conditions that they were living in and the fact that there was nobody fighting for them. And this movement emerges of people who are saying, hey, you're getting shot at. Don't you think we should shoot back? And I don't know how I'm supposed to expect people in Palestine to not want that for themselves.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right, last question for you, Cam. Thank you so much for coming on. How do we get Tim Miller to understand the same perspective that you have now about the existence of Hamas?
Well, I was talking to Tim recently and telling him my take on, like, when I got back from the West Bank, I was thinking about Zionism, and I was thinking about how Zionism honestly sounds super Christian to me. Because if you think about it, like, we get expelled from Christian Europe, the Nukhba happens. The Nukhba is like a crusade, and then we do settler colonialism. And I'm like, this is the most Christian shit I've ever heard in my entire life. And then you look back, and I started history maxing, and Jews were safer under Islam for pretty much all of our existence. And
shouts out to the Ottoman Empire. I didn't say it, he did. Well, no, everybody yells at me when I say this.
Jews had conflicts with Christian Europe, and Muslims had conflicts with Christian Europe. But Jews and Muslims had a pretty much negligible amount of conflicts with each other ever. We would come together and be like, "Hey, isn't Christian Europe really weird?"
Almost all the incidents that happened under the Ottoman Empire against Jews happened between Christians under the Ottoman Empire against Jews under the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, and you know, it's just I and many people were just raised to believe there's this eternal war between Judaism and Islam, and then you learn about it and you read a little bit, and you're like, this is a very new thing. This eternity war between Jews and Muslims is very new. And if you go in and you actually read the books, which, you know, the Quran is a very hard book to read if you are an English speaker, because Arabic does not translate to English. So it reads, it can get a little clunky sometimes, because what is in Arabic a very beautiful and poetic part of the book in English is like, he who is a man of God and does good in the name of God will be looked upon fondly by God because God is good. And then an Arabic speaker will be like, no, you don't get it, man. That's beautiful. And I'm like, all right, I totally believe you. But if you go in and you actually look at these matters, it's like Zionism as a whole, Israel as a whole, is very much this just result of a form of imperialism that Christian Europe was a huge part of. And the Zionist movement that could be traced back to Theodore Herzl, that was originally going to send us to what was British occupied East Africa. Like this doesn't ring.
They were floating Argentina too.
This doesn't ring to me of
Uganda,
Jewish principles. This is just, and it's so disappointing. And I think that a lot of people who grew up with this pro-Israel perspective like to throw themselves a party when they have their come to God moment and their worldview shatters. And I'm like, I don't know. There's so much to do right now. Like once you have had your great awakening, the first thing you should be thinking is, okay, so what can we do now? What can I do now? What tools can I use at my disposal? I personally have connections to lawmakers, so that is what I do with my time is I see what I can get from them. Roe Khanna, I mean, the guy does more in 2 weeks than a lot of people do in their entire term in Congress. And he and I have more plans coming up. I want to take a look into the fact that we're offering embassy services in the West Bank, which is unconscionable. I want to take a look at demanding investigations into the killing of U.S. citizens, which is something I think I can get bipartisan support for because you can tell Republicans, like, they're killing Americans over there.
I don't know if you can get Josh Shapiro and Fetterman on board with their constituent getting killed in the West Bank.
A 19-year-old
19-year-old Palestinian American from Pennsylvania got shot and killed by the settlers.
Yeah,
like 2 weeks ago, I think, or last week.
Not a word from those guys. Josh Shapiro is a little bit more focused on reminding everybody that he feels personally aggrieved by Kamala Harris. That's how he launched his presidential campaign, was his personal grievances. But look, I mean, there's a lot to do. There's a lot more to do on the matter. And my whole thing is like when somebody comes to me and they say, I had my great awakening, I had my realization, I'm like, okay, great, get to work. Like, I don't think it's the responsibility of Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, or anybody of the sort to work on picking apart the Zionist movement and moving people forward. I do think the onus is on people like me because I know a lot of Jewish anti-Zionists who immediately start demonizing every Zionist they know. And I'm like, hey, that was you a year ago. That was you a year ago. You're calling every Zionist a Nazi. And it's like, all right, great. You are in your mid to late 20s and you were just thinking that shit. Like, get to work telling everybody else. Get to work telling everybody else that you had this.
I think it's a sense of shame. And some people in my community who aren't Jewish, but also either didn't care about Israel or just found out about it and were shocked about the violence, will also take a very strong, a terse tone with others who maybe have not had their ideological awakening, or not even ideological awakening, basically just like recognition of basic truths. And I try to explain to people that you should be kinder to people and try to move them in that direction rather than just like pushing them away and just yelling at them across the board. And I do think that you can, look, I'll be sincere. I think someone like yourself, coming from your background, being Jewish in America, has a much better opportunity to change someone's mind than someone like myself. Because let's be real, Zionism is a very racist ideology. And it's an Islamophobic ideology, at least in its current iteration. And for that reason, I have tried and unsuccessfully tried to explain to people in my life that are Zionists and try to, change their attitude about it. And
really, I hadn't heard.
Yeah, one of them.
I didn't know that happened. Tell me more.
My podcast co-host. But I do think that he's a lost cause regardless. But I think that someone like yourself and all the anti-Zionist Jews in my community as well. Like, you have an opportunity to change the mindset of your family members as well. So you should try to do that all the time, especially because there's this thing I think about all the time where a lot of American Jews that are Zionists, that grow up with it, that don't really think about it, they're not as cynical as Jonathan Greenblatt, right? Like they're not constantly thinking like, oh, anti-Semitism is not that big of a deal. What's really the problem is anti-Zionism. But they might arrive at that conclusion through a lot of social conditioning. But ultimately, they do care about anti-Semitism. And I feel like that is a very good entry point into this conversation to be like, don't you feel like being constantly associated with these fucking assholes that are doing so much violence in your name is like part of the reason why the average American now is legitimately like not trusting of Jews as a unit, as a whole?
The next 200, 300 plus years of anti-Semitic violence that is going to lead to us getting killed and people trying to exterminate us is going to be directly citing the genocidal actions the state of Israel has taken since October 7th. So there is nothing that has caused more harm or damage to Jewish people in this world than the Zionist project. And I try to explain that to people and tell them it is only with love and concern for the Jewish people that I take this position. But it's a very difficult thing. And I think that with a lot of Jewish anti-Zionists, there's some times where I think you get a certain amount of empathy where you are embodying it so radically that you kind of start to center yourself in it and it becomes a little narcissistic.
Well, the conversation we're having is like very specific about what anti-Zionist Jews can do to talk to Zionist Jews.
Well, yeah, as it pertains to talking to Zionist Jews,
Yeah.
it's about centering the humanity of it all, and it's about talking about, I always just talk about international law, and that sounds so silly, but people like to frame my policy as very radical. Like when I was running for Congress, I had what I would consider to be one of the most anti-Israel platforms. You got the AOK from Squirrel. From ZEI Squirrel, from ASCIA, ZEI. But the thing I said was like, there is absolutely nothing in my platform that is not completely in line with agreed upon international law.
Yeah.
And that's something that resonates with some people, because I talk to some Zionists where I do not break them out of what they consider to be Zionism. And this is something I always tell people to think about is, I know I've grown up around a lot of Zionists. I went to Jewish summer camp. I went to Hebrew school. If you ask 3 Zionists to define Zionism, you're generally going to get 3 different answers. So,
but that's by design, right? Like it's intentionally vague so that, you know, they can conduct polls to be like 90% of American Jews believe that, you know, Zionism is incredibly important to their identity, or like Israel is incredibly important to their existence or whatever. And it's like that ends up creating this like weird statistical inconsistency, because like if you ask directly like American Jews, when they poll American Jews about like Israel's conduct, right, it's like, especially under the age of 35, large majorities of American Jews are also aware that Israel is committing a genocide, agree that Israel is committing a genocide. And it's like, how does that match up with Zionism in general?
You also don't even know what Israel's built on. I learned what the Nakba was from you, like when I had already cast my first ballot before. And the fact that you don't learn about these things is so terrifying. But again, it's, you know, a lot for a lot of Zionist people, Zionist just means Jews to them. And I say, okay, we understand most Zionists in America are Christians, and Christian Zionists want us to have Israel so they can go to heaven and we can live in an eternal hell.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
That's always just so funny, because like people will be like, oh, well, the Torah. I mean, not the Torah, sorry. They'll be like, the Talmud. The Talmud says like Jesus is like burning an excrement or whatever. It's like the number one thing that anti-Semites love bringing up, as though it's like has any sort of like serious relevance to like contemporary Jewish existence, right?
I mean, the Talmud has a great line in common with Quran 532, and I cited it on Jake Tapper because I was like,
that's true.
What if I cited the Quran on Jake Tapper? And it's, you know, to save one life is as if to save all of humanity. Some interesting stuff in the Quran.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, but it's a religious text, and the Talmud in and of itself. This wasn't even about like Talmudic script or anything. I was just saying that like people that love focusing on that forget that like at the end of the rapture, all the Jews are going to hell to burn in eternal damnation. Approximately 144,000, I believe, get sucked up into the heavens and turn into clothes. But that's it. Everyone else is going to hell.
Yeah, and I
It's
don't
not
like,
exactly a good project at the end of that.
That's my favorite thing about Judaism, I would say, is that we just don't have hell. So no matter what I do in this lifetime, ultimately my punishment will only be so bad. Like I think, if I remember correctly, in Judaism, if you're not going to heaven, your soul just kind of bounces around the universe. I'm like, all right, that doesn't sound so bad.
It's great.
Sounds better than hell. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. Well, Mormons are goated on that. They get their own planet
Yeah, I mean,
where your first wife is stuck with you, unfortunately.
you really got to hand it to them.
Yeah, they know how to do things right. Well, thank you, Cam. What do you want to tell people before I let you go?
Well, everybody, follow Representative Khanna's work closely. There's going to be a lot more coming, and I am currently foreign policy maxing to the nth degree, trying to figure out everything we can do to just make this, make it as difficult as possible to expand settlements, to move into settlements. In my hometown, not my hometown, in the city I call home, New York, there are still auctions where settlement land is auctioned off.
Yes, Yoron Musadani.
And the mayor has been put in a very impossible position with that. And I do not envy the position the mayor has been put in with that, but I definitely mean to put us in a political environment where people in the city I live in are not.
You don't like that one?
Encouraging criminal. I can't speak to that matter. You know, the mayor.
I'm fucking around. I don't say this sincerely.
The
I
mayor,
love Zoran.
The mayor has an affordability agenda, and I am going to recite the mayor's office's talking points as much as I can, and that is my position on these matters.
No, that's the homie. I'm fucking around. He is put in a difficult spot. That's true.
I mean, it's just it's so ridiculous. He fucking can't do anything right, and that's why I, want to make sure that there isn't too much pressure on him to placate the Zionist community in New York City, because at the end of the day, unless he actively calls a drone strike on a hospital, they're not going to love him. And there might be people who tell him, oh, if you cede this ground to them, if you give them this, then maybe they'll finally accept you. And it's like, this is a brown Muslim man. Like,
no,
unless,
they won't.
Unless you get caught.
Bro, he went and saw he visited the Red Bay, dude. Like, come on. He went into the grave, the site. It's not happening. He hit the maximum appeal. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. Sid Rosenberg is still calling him a fucking cockroach. You know what I mean?
Could you fucking imagine if a radio host said that about a Jewish mayor, called the Jewish mayor a cockroach?
Yeah.
It would be game over.
Yeah, 100%.
And this guy's still just fucking posting up.
Well, I was going to say yes, but now I'm thinking, well, Candace Owens, she kind of takes it almost there. I mean, she was waving the copy of the Talmudic Jew a couple months ago. It was crazy.
It's so funny because so many people talk about the Talmud, and most Jews are not even really familiar with it. They're just they look at it as fanfic.
I mean, it's really funny that there is there's this idea. It's the way I describe it is it's kind of like transphobes that know everything about trans existence and the latest and greatest in trans medical technology. You know what I mean? Where they're before people who are transphobic are so locked in, so tuned in to all of the latest and greatest in trans tech, right? So that they can be better at being transphobic.
At being a hater, yeah.
And I feel like that's just how it is with Nazis too, because I know a lot of Jewish people. I don't think any of them at any point were I've really learned quite a bit about the Talmud. It guides my life. It's not even supposed to be a piece of text that you're supposed to read and learn from necessarily, but it's more so just Jewish debate lords over 2,000 fucking years arguing about shit.
It's fan fiction.
Arguing about how to deal with everyday problems. Yeah, it's like a theology subreddit basically.
Well, I digress. The last thing I want to say to everybody, I guess, is something I noticed in Palestine was the sense of humor that people had there, because comedy is this hasn't come up yet, and honestly, I'm glad, because I talk about it too much. I'm a school shooting survivor. I was at the shooting in Parkland, Florida. And I just learned through that process that that comedy is like the weapon we have against trauma. And it wasn't just that the Palestinians I met were so fucking funny. They have a very Jew-coded sense of humor. And it was really interesting to me. And I'm like, maybe it isn't Jewish humor. Maybe it's Semitic humor. Like,
or maybe it was humor born out of like, being dealt a certain hand over many decades.
I mean,
and that trauma, that united trauma.
But that's the thing is like the Palestinians I spoke to see Jews as their cousins who largely have been dealing with this overcoming movement called Zionism that is this hateful ideology that leads to people getting killed. But I know Palestinians who have had access to very, very meager educational resources in their life who have a more nuanced perspective on the difference between Zionism and Judaism than New York Times columnists with 3 master's degrees. Like, it's crazy. The Palestinians I met there were like, oh yeah, the Jews are historical cousins who, we are very similar to, and we are the Semitic people. Sucks that this Zionism thing is happening. And I was just like, oh, I wish a lot of professors had your nuanced opinion on this matter.
Yeah, well, if you can give me the names of those professors that have the nuance, I would love to give it to Canary Mission so they can be fired promptly.
Right. And there's one called Project Esther, right?
Oh, well, Project Esther is the Project 2025 specifically for basically opening the door to prosecuting people for speech by starting at anti-Semitism, what they call anti-Semitism, which is anti-Zionism in general.
Don't drag my girl Esther into this. Yesterday was Purim, and to know the story of Purim, which I do because I was in the Purim play at my Hebrew school every year, Esther should not be used to do this shit.
I don't know what the Esther significance is for Purim.
There's this guy named Haman. Haman wanted to kill all the Jews. There's this Queen Vashti, and the king was kind of a fuckboy. It was a mess. Purim is a mess. But it is what it is. Anyway, thanks so much for having me, man.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Cam.